Springfield's Talk 1041. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. My name is Nick Reed. Astronauts on their way back home after being stranded by the Biden administration in space for a very, very long time, by their own acknowledgement. I did get a lot of coverage last week when one of the astronauts during an interview was asked whether or not he felt that there was anything to the belief that Elon Musk expressed that the only reason they were still up there is because Biden didn't want Musk to look good during the campaign. You know, Musk had offered, I'll go get these guys. And the Biden administration had no interest in that. It was during the campaign. We know how vengeful the left is when it comes to anything that might make their opposition look good. I mean, they've gotten so psychotic, they're running around burning up electric vehicle Tesla stations. I saw Kim Kardashian had some photo and there was a Tesla in it. She's being labeled a Nazi. A Jewish man was driving a Tesla vehicle and some left-wing nut in the dust on his Tesla drew a swastika, which we know anti-Semitism and those on the left wing go hand in hand. They've just become so just driven by absolute hatred. This it's an evil hatred. That you would leave two human beings in space? Think about the absurdity of that. Two human beings stranded in space because you don't want Elon Musk to look good. You know how psychotic that is? Is that any better than somebody who, if you have some sort of Lifetime movie and you got this central character who's psychotic and he's obsessed with a coworker that he feels is always getting attention, and so he kidnaps the coworker and builds this cellar underground and traps him there, not letting him out because he just doesn't want him to continue to outshine himself, when it comes to work. And he's just so obsessed with, everybody likes Gary. Oh, Gary this, Gary that. Gary's just so wonderful. And so he just kidnaps him and keeps him for like a year down in some sort of cellar. Is that really any worse than what Biden did? Or whomever made that decision to leave two individuals away from their families? I believe both of the two astronauts are married. They've got family to some degree. Leave them up there just because you don't want Elon Musk to look good. Don't want him to get credit. Daddy, these people are psychopaths. We can all but guarantee if Trump had not been elected president, those astronauts would not be expected to touch down this afternoon. They would still be up there for Lord knows how long. They've been doing some interviews, want to play some audio coming up in which not only are they pleased with Trump and Musk, but one of the two, expressed gratitude that they are in the positions that they're in. In other words, Kamala's not president. Biden was voted out of the White House, and instead, Trump is in the White House. Grateful that he is in that position now. I guess so. You imagine? You know that there's communication with them clearly during this entire period of time. There had to be someone. I'd be fascinated. I hope that they sit down and do long-form interviews with, like Joe Rogan or someone, and talk about that moment when they start to recognize that, like they realize, Musk, he can come get us. This is fantastic. We can get back home to our families. That slow realization, like, wait, are they really going to leave us up here? Simply because Musk has supported and endorsed Donald Trump? Is that really what's going on? Is this really why we're going to be kept away from our families? I hope somebody does that, or I hope they are willing to sit down. I'm sure there's plenty of people who would love to interview him. Hopefully they'll do that. I want to also play some audio that went a little bit viral, and it was from, I believe, Friday's broadcast of Bill Maher's show. And there's a left-wing journalist who is a left-wing MAGA person. She became a MAGA person. She still identifies as left-wing. And she explained tariffs in about a 2-minute period of time that left Bill Maher saying, well, I guess, yeah, that's an answer. And a lot of people have been sharing it because it's being described as like one of the best, most concise explanations of tariffs to date. And I thought that I'd play that for you as well. There's some auto pin interesting updates. There's a lot of stuff we've got this morning. Pyramid Roofing Company, talk and text line 447 KSGF. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Cullerton.
What
Fox.
what
Look at my bike.
Oh, it broke.
I know, it like came off of the little pole. Oh gosh, can you still hear me?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, let me do the weather and then.
Did it come up? Did this part come detached?
Yes,
that's happened to me before.
I don't know what to do here.
Yeah, I you'll be able to fix it. If not, I know how.
Okay, good. Okay.
It's just because the swiveling back and forth slowly unscrews this thing. See, like I'm tightening mine up right now. Mine's fallen off before too, and so it just came unscrewed.
All right, well, let me do this weather, and then you can help me over here.
All right, you got it.
The first alert forecast from Cullerton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. A wind advisory and a red flag warning are in effect until 8 p.m. Today, mostly cloudy and breezy with a high near 79. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 56. For your Wednesday, cloudy with a chance of showers after 3 p.m. with a high near 60. And looking ahead to Thursday, we'll see sunny skies with a high near 54.
Stranded NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams successfully undocked from the International Space Station at 1:05 a.m. Tuesday. I suspect that is Eastern Time, beginning their long-awaited journey back home after more than 9 months in space. Wilmore and Williams returning home in a SpaceX capsule with fellow NASA astronaut Nick Hague and Russian astronaut Alexander Gorbanov. They are expected to splash down off the Florida coast 5:57 p.m. Tuesday. Hours before their departure from the ISS, Trump said he had been in contact with NASA's acting administrator, Janet Petro, who is coordinating the mission to bring Wilmore and Williams back home. He wrote in a post, quote, "She's coordinating our team of highly respected scientists, space engineers, and various other geniuses who has agreed to let our astronauts come home long prior to the 2-week period originally approved by NASA. Janet was great. She said, let's bring them home now, sir." And I thanked her. Can you imagine you think you're going away for 2 weeks in space, in a confined space? I mean, severely confined to what the average human is accustomed to, unless you're a prisoner. Even then, oftentimes, unless you're in solitary confinement, you're allowed to go out in the yard. And then 9-10 months, you're up there. Now, the reason that this, of course, has become noteworthy is because Elon Musk, months ago, when Biden was still president, said, hey, I can go get him. And the Biden administration's like, no, we don't think so. Musk suggested that the only reason, and this makes sense, no reason was given other than the political component to it, the desire to deny what may be seen as a victory of Team Trump. If Elon Musk had been out there campaigning for Kamala Harris, do you think that the Biden administration would have said, no, we don't want you rescuing those astronauts? Of course they wouldn't deny it. Oh, there would have been much ado about it. One of the astronauts a couple of weeks ago was asked, do you also believe what Musk has asserted here, that you've been stranded up here for political purposes? And he said, yeah, I believe that. Before they left the space station, of course, they've done a lot of different interviews, and one of the clips that has been floating around has the two of them and their thoughts about just the situation and the ability to finally be able to come home.
We're coming back before long, so don't make all those plans without me. We'll be back before too long.
I can tell you at the outset, all of us have the utmost respect for Mr. Musk, and obviously respect and admiration for our President of the United States, Donald Trump. We appreciate them. We appreciate all that they do for us, for human spaceflight, for our nation. And we're thankful that they are in the positions they're in.
Yeah, I bet they are thankful that they are in the positions they're in. That obviously is a bit of a swipe at the previous administration, being grateful that now the White House is occupied by Donald Trump as opposed to Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. We've come to expect a media that is not what many Americans grew up with, but instead left-wing activists. I think the depravity of all of this is getting overlooked. To some degree, it reminds me of the Biden administration abandoning Americans in Benghazi, all in order to keep a narrative going. Obama running for re-election. And the narrative at the time was he had whipped terrorism. This is why when ISIS was becoming something that was of grave concern to a lot of folks, the Obama administration's position, their approach was to dismiss ISIS as nothing. This is where we found Obama famously declaring ISIS was a JV team, that they weren't anything serious. We didn't need to worry about them. Quipping that simply because you put a varsity jersey on doesn't mean you're not JV. and it was and the New York Times had written some pieces just about how tough Obama was on terrorism. This is where it was revealed that there was a kill list that I believe it was every Tuesday, according to the New York Times, was presented to Obama, which included Americans that were suspected to have any sort of connection to terrorists, and they didn't have to be charged with anything, certainly no trial, but Obama, the way that it was explained in the New York Times, the Obama did not pick which ones to kill. He picked which ones not to kill. That way he could not have blood on his hands. So he could not be, sued or, have anyone accuse him of arbitrarily picking human beings, including Americans, without being charged with anything of assassination or of execution. And so the way that they got around that was he said, oh, no, take this person off the list, take that person off the list. So he was saving people instead of having them executed. This is, by the way, this is all information that came out of the Obama administration. This isn't any sort of speculation. The reason that was written up was to show America how tough Obama was on terrorism. The same people who ream on Trump for deporting non-Americans that support Hamas were fully supportive of Obama just picking people to be executed because they'd been seen supporting terrorism. And then Benghazi occurred, of course, and as we now famously know, we abandoned Americans there. And this was done in order to try desperately to keep that narrative going that there was no terrorism. Obama had it all licked. They went so far as to falsely claim that, it was because some guy posted a video online and that made a bunch of terrorists angry. They went so far as to put the guy in jail to create that cover story. This despite the fact that our allied embassies had before that left their embassies because they knew that there was a potential terrorist attack coming on September 11th of that year. The Red Cross had left that area because everyone knew a terrorist attack was coming, but the Obama administration wanted to keep the narrative going for re-election purposes. This astronaut situation reminds me of it a bit. You have American lives at stake, but we got a re-election coming up. During the Obama years in Benghazi, it was just ignore it, just ignore it. Let's act like it's no big deal. Oh, but there are Americans there. Wow, we can't what are we going to do? Engage in some sort of battle with these terrorists? We're really going to fight these terrorists and make an even bigger deal out of it, draw all sorts of international attention? These astronauts in space, these guys, or the guy and gal, supposed to be up there 2 weeks. We're going on a year here. Musk says he can go get. We can't let Musk. That's a Trump ally. Do you know how much bragging Trump's going to do? Imagine the memes that the Trump campaign's going to send out. That we, the sitting president of the United States, is not able to get our astronauts out of this stranded situation, but Trump, who's not even president, is, with the help of an ally, able to do it? We can't have that happen. These are human lives. And it's worrisome to me that it isn't more troublesome to Americans. That, I mean, it may be to you, but just it's like, oh, they're coming home, and that is great. But why were they there? I think it also says something about the Democrat Party and how people have accepted how depraved they are. That there really isn't much shock. Like, oh, well, that seems par for the course. People aren't outraged. That's a reflection of how degraded the Democrat Party's reputation has become. That it isn't shocking, it's not appalling to the American people that the then Democrat president would leave two human beings, two Americans, stranded in space, because saving them might have looked good for the political opposition. Shameful. But the lack of outrage suggests that's what we've come to expect from the Democrat Party. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. And welcoming the merging of families, the KSGF family and the Pinniger family, family owned and operated. It's been several years ago that I purchased a vehicle from one of the Pinniger locations, and they are getting ready for the grand opening of their new building for Honda. That's going to be sometime in April at South Campbell, just south of Walnut Lawn there. You probably have seen it if you've driven by the construction. In fact, when I was chatting with them some time ago, they had mentioned that after not the most recent storms, but some of the others that had come through, people were like, oh my gosh, you guys really got torn up with the storms. But in fact, it's part of the massive renovation, and they're going to have all sorts of incredible deals with Honda, and the fact that 7 separate Honda models have been named Best Car and Truck of 2025 by Money is something obviously they're very excited about, and the offerings that they're going to have specifically at that location. So a big welcome. We look forward to partnering on a number of different ventures with the Pinniger family, longtime family in the area, and we're pleased to merge with them. It feels almost like one of those historic situations where it's like the daughter of the French king and the son of, like all coming together. Sure. Feels pretty important and significant, doesn't it? There's this story about, it's so silly, And the fact that I think it was Peter Doocy even asked about it. The Levitt, the White House press secretary, some low-level elected official in France was like, we want the Statue of Liberty back because of, Trump. And we hate Trump. Okay. Well, first off, that's not how presents work. When you give someone a gift, you don't get to get it back. Now, Levitt, of course, is like, no, that's not going to happen. You know what? I almost be like, all right, if you guys want it, go ahead and take it back. You come get it, though. We're not delivering it. And just leave it at that. Big talkers over there. When they would just be like the French, would give you a gift and then want to take it back. That's not how presents work. If they did take it back, I think we should submit a bill for all the upkeep.
Yeah.
And how many tax dollars do you think have been spent to keep that thing up? And by the way, you're not getting the little plaque underneath it with the "Give me your huddled masses" and all that crap. That was some poem that was written by some kid in a contest. We did that part. So you don't get the pedestal either. Good luck with that. Getting her to balance on her own. Go ahead, take her back. Coming up, audio that has been labeled one of the strongest cases for Trump's tariffs that has been heard yet to date. Hence the reason that it's being shared quite a bit. It was on with Real Time Bill Maher by a left-wing journalist for Newsweek, self-identified left-winger, but who also, she's a MAGA leftist, is how she declares herself. So she's left-wing, but she's like, Trump actually is doing things that work here, and that makes sense. And so, yeah, I may be a left-winger, but I'm really supporting him on some of this stuff. And she does a breakdown of tariffs, at least in the capacity of industry. Part of the reason that there's so much confusion about tariffs is that tariffs serve a number of different purposes. And you probably noticed this, a lot of folks that are like, well, they need to do a better job of telling us what it is. What's the point of these tariffs? And maybe they could do a better job. But at the same time, they serve different purposes. The reason for tariffs on China are different than the reasons for tariffs on Mexico, and are different than the reasons for the tariffs on Canada. And to some degree, there is overlapping. They don't serve just one purpose at a time. Tariffs can walk and chew gum at the same time, and that's what we have. And so that really feeds into a lot of the confusion, because we like simple answers. We like, 2 + 2 = 4. It's that simple. But tariffs serving multiple purposes, and this is where Trump, his success comes into play. He's able to recognize that oftentimes a certain step forward actually takes you forward in 5 different directions potentially, maybe 3 of those to a greater degree than 2, and so he does these things that he recognizes can have multiple benefits at the same time. And that's not something that really is as easily digestible. But I want to play this audio for you coming up. It's very short and pretty concise. And like I said, people are sharing it about because it's like, oh, well, gosh, that makes sense. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. A wind advisory and a red flag warning are in effect until 8 p.m. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies and breezy with a high near 79. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 56. For your Wednesday, cloudy with a chance of showers after 3 p.m. with a high near 60. And looking ahead to Thursday, we'll see sunny skies with a high near 54.
PJ Media had one of a number of stories. Strongest case for Trump's tariffs I've heard yet. Batya Ungar Sargon, deputy opinion editor of Newsweek. PJ Media writing made one of the strongest, most effective cases yet for former President Donald Trump's tariffs during the latest episode of Real Time with Bill Maher, breaking down exactly why these tariffs are necessary, and by the end, she left Bill Maher flustered. I wouldn't say he's, well, I suppose if you watch it at the end, he goes, well, at least yeah, that's an answer. She is a self-described MAGA leftist. Somewhat now, Bill Maher introduces her as right of the center, and she's like, "No, I'm not. I'm a leftist MAGA person," which he said that doesn't make any sense. I'm sure to him it doesn't, but nonetheless, this is her explanation in the discussion, just relatively short, on tariffs.
I want to answer the question about manufacturing in the 70s.
Oh, I don't blame you. We can go back to that too.
People want to go back to the 70s is in the 70s, the largest share of our GDP was in the middle class. And that was not separate from the fact that 25% of our economy was in manufacturing.
Right, the largest share of our GDP
was in the middle class, the biggest chunk, the middle class,
most
people
of
who
what
were
was
middle
produced
income.
came from the middle, and now it comes from what? The rich.
Now, the top 20% controls over 50% of the GDP. Our economy was an upward funnel of wealth, and the largest share, which used to be in manufacturing, which gave a lot of working class people a middle class standard of living, now the largest share is in real estate and finance, meaning that asset-rich Americans are controlling over 50% of the GDP, and they have left the working class out of all of that prosperity that was generated. That manufacturing is still being done. It's just being done in other countries. It is still
for wages we will not work for.
That's exactly right. You're right, Bill. That's what the tariffs are for. They are to make American workers more competitive in the global market. Why are we accepting that there should be a race to the bottom? You know, China, what is its competitive advantage over us? It's that it pays slave wages. Why should we accept that? They're still manufacturing our PPE, our pharmaceuticals, our cars. They're making all that stuff. Trump says there are 5 industries that we cannot have any kind of national security without having a stake in them. Pharmaceuticals, lumber, steel, aluminum, and I forget what the 5th one was. But these are really important that we have a stake in the manufacturing of the things that we need as a nation so that when China decides that it wants to go to war against us, we're not relying on them for steel and aluminum in order to fight them.
Okay, well, at least that's an answer.
Now, what's unfortunate is I suspect even somebody like Bill Maher, who can be relatively objective on particularly social issues, he'll hear that and say, well, yeah, that's at least an answer. But then because Trump is the one behind it, he'll still say that it's wrong, it's awful, and it's dumbheaded. What she says there is true, and it's accurate. Tariffs, when it comes to our economy, is a trade-off, as she noted there. We can get the products oftentimes for cheaper. Well, why is that? That's because countries like China have slaves, and they can force them to perform labor and then undercut the producers of the same products in the United States. So the tariff is to disallow them that advantage. So if you have an American company that is producing a product, but because of our standard of living or minimum wage laws or whatever the reason that the product is, can go on the shelf for $10. at a minimal profit for the company. Well, in China, because they have slaves, they can do this same thing, plus the shipping and getting it over here for $7. A tariff is a way to disallow them that financial advantage, undercutting American companies, so that it makes the American company producing that product, when it's on the shelf, at a price that is competitive to the product that is imported from another country with a tariff on it. Now, the downside of it, if you want to call it that, for American businesses, is a lot of businesses in America, whatever their product is, perhaps, they rely on components that other countries are able to produce cheaper. And so the argument there is that while you can have some instances, which do occur, obviously, the slave labor in countries like China allow for them to undercut American companies. Some companies say, hey, listen, we benefit from it. Because they use slavery, in many instances, not all instances, but even outside of those instances of forced labor, but just lower, cheaper wages, we as a company are able to buy the components for our product at a much cheaper price. So that is an advantage to us, not having the tariffs. And if you put tariffs on that, then that means that we as an American company have to raise our prices because the components that we use from them has a tariff on it. It works both ways. You can this is the thing about tariffs. You can find industries in the United States that benefit from it. You can find industries in the United States that suffer because of tariffs. Now, of course, then you have the potential result of some of those companies with the tariffs saying, all right, well, it has now become cheaper for us to actually produce these products in the United States itself, so we might as well move our factories there. And there have been a number of industries that have already said they're going to do that. One of them, an auto industry. I think it was may have been Honda, in fact, that announced a few weeks ago that because of the tariff situation, they were going to move a factory from Mexico, and I don't know if it's a currently operating factory, or I don't recall, or if it's one that was getting ready to be built or in the middle of being built, but they said, no, we're going to Indiana, USA now, because of the tariffs. So those are jobs, good-paying jobs that are going to result from tariffs, and that means those are Americans that are going to be, they'll have an income, they'll be paying income taxes, they'll be purchasing things. So you got sales taxes, which are going to, property taxes will go to the local schools. From an economic standpoint, just that alone, that's one of the spokes on the wheel of reasons to use tariffs. And while her explanation there is getting a lot of credit because, well, finally somebody is describing tariffs in a way that is understandable, it isn't necessarily that the ways in which tariffs have impacts or has an impact is complicated in and of itself. It's just that there are so many different reasons that a tariff gets used. Even economically, like I said, one, it makes oftentimes it levels the playing field from a competitive nature, but at the same time, it can lure companies to move to the United States. So there's an advantage. It can be used in order to try and force countries like Mexico to enforce the border. It can be used in order to put the screws to a country like China because they constantly steal proprietary information from companies and universities here in the United States. They just steal intellectual property. And so it could be a way to try and punish them for that. fentanyl. This is one of the reasons that Trump has talked about utilizing tariffs to punish Mexico and China because of the fentanyl issue. The frustration I think a lot of people have when it comes to the use of, it's twofold. One is the inability to simply understand it. And that is because, and Trump is accustomed to this in the world of business, that sometimes there's 8 different moving parts in a decision that you make. I believe that Trump also, he understands this, and I suspect in Trump's mind, while it is good to communicate as best as possible to the American people why it is that certain things are being done, at the same time, I suspect he knows in his mind that this is going to work. These things are going to benefit the American people, and so the questions that people have now and the frustrations they have now, 2 years from now or 4 years from now or whatever it is that he projects, people won't even remember this. They're not going to remember the confusion and frustration over messaging when it comes to tariffs and wondering, how is it that the markets are supposed to respond, because everything is going to settle and rearrange itself in a manner that he sees as being a more even playing field for Americans, thus helping stimulate the American economy on solid ground, on a solid foundation. Not simply by giving people a check or creating some one-time artificial push to the economy, but rearranging the very foundation of the way that we exchange commerce with other countries throughout the world. And therefore, you get more long-term solid benefit from it instead of, just 6 months or 1 year, and then it goes back to the way it was before. Or even worse, like we see with stimulus checks, you end up with inflation. And this is part of the problem that we have today, is that it is very, very, very difficult to undo the damage that gets done oftentimes when you artificially try and make people feel as if they're better off than they actually are. The issue of tariffs is not one that I believe a person can simply say, oh, they are good or they are bad. It depends on when they're used, how they're used, and the reaction to them. It is a tool. And it's why I tend to feel that there's not much benefit to any discussion in which they are labeled as just really bad as they exist or really good as they exist, because it is a tool. And like any tool, a hammer can be something that builds a home from the ground up. It's also something that can be used to bash someone's skull in. One is good, one is not. It depends on how it's being used. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. tomorrow, I believe it's tomorrow, there will be, unless it could be today, sometime soon. I know that's very helpful to you. There is going to be a Netflix documentary released, The Twister Caught in the Storm, and it is about the 2011 Joplin tornado. And I've seen the trailer. Many of you probably have as well. And it looks as if just the production value of it's pretty good and impressive. The film apparently centers on a specific group of people whose high school graduation day was affected by the tornado. So a lot of interview and a lot of footage that were captured by a lot of just the people in Joplin on that day in May 2011. It is described as a feature-length documentary telling the story of the EF5 tornado that swept through Joplin on May 22nd, 2011, film focusing on the group of young people from the area whose high school graduation day was affected by the tornado. Ranked as the 7th deadliest tornado in U.S. history, killed 161 people, left another 1,000 injured, tearing through 13 miles of the city with wind speeds over 200 miles per hour. The documentary synopsis reads, "This catastrophic event ravaged Joplin, and yet its community overcame, rebuilt, and became an enduring symbol of hope." The film features adrenaline-inducing real-life footage filmed by people in Joplin, taking us in the eye of the storm. It's directed by Alexandra Lacey, a UK-based filmmaker known for working on projects like Tinder Swindler, American Nightmare, and Three Identical Strangers. She also directed the TV series Fake Chic, Welcome to Murder Town, and Mansion the Lost Tapes. I believe, oh wait, maybe this story does say, yes, it is available to watch on Netflix 2 a.m. Wednesday, March 19th. And that's Central Standard Time. Why 2 a.m.? I don't know why at 2 a.m. And so you do need a Netflix subscription to watch. And you can see the trailer, I'm sure, if you just go to YouTube. And the name of it is The Twister Caught in the Storm. Okay. Yeah, so we get it posted, and then you can watch it. It looks like it's pretty impressive. And I mean, it's somebody who clearly knows what she is doing as a documentary filmmaker. And again, so that'll be released. You should be able to watch it at 2 a.m. I guess after midnight tonight on Netflix. I want a great homeloan.com. Yes. The world of home loans. It can be scary. It can be overwhelming. It can be so cold. You're just a number. You're trying to get a hold of the person handling your account. You got to call a 1-800 number. And then it's like, please listen carefully as the prompts may have changed since the last time you called. And then it says it in some other language and then some other language. That's not what you get with the characters in their team. First off, they're all right here. And they customize the experience for you. They're there in order to provide you information, just a phone call away at any time. Where sometimes, usually a couple times a month, they're with us out at Scramblers, so you can visit with them there. Any of your home loan needs, refinancing needs, any questions you may have, reach out to them at iwantagreathomeloan.com, because you do. I'm seeing a number of these headlines. Ceasefire falls apart as Israel strikes Gaza. Even Fox News, ceasefire over as Israel strikes Gaza after Hamas refused to release hostages, officials say. Now, the Fox News headline is a bit more balanced, but you see so many of these headlines, and it makes it sound like Israel just decided, you know what, we're tired of this ceasefire, so we're just going to start the killing again. The ceasefire ended when Hamas broke it by refusing to comply in the turning over of hostages. That's what broke it. The whole point of the ceasefire was about the hostages being released. And Hamas is like, no, we're not going to do that anymore. That's what stopped the ceasefire. And this relentless attempt to side with terrorists, this relentless attempt to make it look like the Jews are the problem. They need to pound away. Hamas has got to learn that they cannot continue to play that game. This is the game that they always play. It's the game terrorists always play. Make an agreement. And then when they feel that whatever it is they were looking to get out of it, then they stop with the hopes that there will be offerings of new promises, that they can extract more concessions. And you can understand why they behave that way, because that's how they have been rewarded. This is also just further evidence that until these people are eliminated, this is never going to stop. This will never stop. There is no peacefully existing with these people. There's no coexisting. Giving them their own country isn't going to make them all of a sudden decide, we're cool with the Jews. That's not how these people operate. Full elimination is the only way there will be peace in that region. You know who else knows that? The people who run all of the surrounding Muslim countries, which is why they have refused to take these people. Oh, they go on and on about the plight of the Palestinian people, the people of Gaza. Oh, how awful, how horrible it is. So the Trump administration said to Egypt, said to Jordan, oh, hey, guys, at least until the rebuilding's done, why don't you guys, hey, here you go. Oh, no, we don't want them. You know why they don't want them? Because amongst them are terrorists who will just as quickly kill and murder other Muslims if that is what they feel is necessary in order to attain further power. And these other countries know it. This is why they don't want them. This is why they're not taking the refugees. It's not because all of the refugees are bad, terrorist-loving individuals, though the amount of support that the terrorists get is pretty remarkable from the people of Gaza. But it's because they utilize the people of Gaza. That's where they live. They are integrated there. They are the elected representatives. No one. It's not just the Jews who don't want terrorists living amongst them. It's also these other Muslim nations. Until they are completely gone, eliminated, these people don't retire. Retirement for them is what they believe are the 77 virgins waiting for them. That's their retirement. But here on earth, they never hang it up. They don't say, well, I guess my day of killing Jews is over. Yeah, I had a good run. I think I'll just sit on the front porch now and just watch the world go by. That's not how these folks operate. And, I fully understand why it is that after Trump got elected president. And, of course, we saw military action by the Israelis after that. But then there was this attempt to get some hostages released, which many of them were. But even if they all get released, these people will not stop until they are gone, eliminated. And Netanyahu's certainly expressed that he understands that. We've got weather coming up in a moment. I want to play also some audio of Dershowitz. He was on Newsmax with Greta Van Susteren talking about this auto pin issue. And Trump has raised questions about whether the auto pin use was, whether it was legit for pardons, whether he was the one that was actually utilizing the auto pin. It's interesting because we're already seeing the media run cover with headlines like, past presidents have used the auto pin. That's not what's being questioned here. It's whether or not Biden used the auto pin. Yes, when past presidents have used the auto pin, it is the past president utilizing the auto pin. Aside from any sort of constitutional questions aside, and depending on some of what Dershowitz talks about, the different types of documents, some that are legit, some that are not when it comes to the auto pin and his assessment, it's not whether or not, that's not what's being discussed. It's who was pushing the start auto pinning button in the White House. Given the fact that Biden specifically told Mike Johnson when it came to a certain executive order, I never signed that. When there was an auto pin signature, well, if he didn't, who did? The last minute pardons, this is where a lot of the questioning coming. And given that we have now been dealing with a number of journalists and people from the previous administration that are fully acknowledging Biden did not know what was going on. He was not in charge. Other people were in charge. So what auto pin was used without his consent? This is a very legitimate question. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. A wind advisory and a red flag warning are in effect for the entire KSGF listening area until 8 p.m. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies and breezy with a high near 79. Tonight partly cloudy with a low around 56. For your Wednesday, cloudy with a chance of showers after 3 p.m. with a high near 60. And looking ahead to Thursday, we'll see sunny skies with a high near 54.
Streaming live, KSGF.com. 90s rock legends live and collective soul this summer with special guest Our Lady Peace and Grayland at Thunder Ridge Nature Arena Friday, August 22nd. Don't miss your chance to win tickets. Visit KSGF.com or use the KSGF mobile app in order to get registered for your chance to win tickets to that. So very, very exciting stuff. I want to play some audio that I thought was a pretty good breakdown in the assessment of the use of the auto pin. Now, Trump is asking these questions, I think openly, just so people will discuss it. And that is, who was using the auto pin? The media is already trying to run cover for the auto pin use. Not so much to defend Biden, but to defend particularly those who put on the January 6th show trials, who were at the last minute given a pardon. And the question is, was Biden even the one who did it? The media's attempt to cover and make all of this seem like much ado about nothing is to note that, well, the auto pin's been used by past presidents. This isn't a question as to whether or not Biden was allowed to use the auto pin. It's a question as to whom within the White House was actually using the auto pin. Because apparently Biden, according to many of his own former administration officials, was not in charge of the presidency. It was a number of different random people. On Newsmax, Greta Van Susteren, Alan Dershowitz gave his assessment of the constitutionality of the auto pin issue.
Well, there are two issues. One, what is the document that was signed? And second, what was the nature of the auto pin documents? The Constitution requires that any bill, before it becomes law, has to be directly signed by the president. The Constitution says he shall sign, not the vice president. He can't delegate it. He must sign. And so if a bill is signed by auto pen, I think there's a very substantial argument that it's unlawful. Pardon, on the other hand, it simply says in the Constitution, he shall have the power to pardon. And I suspect that probably the courts would say that the president can pardon orally. Then he doesn't have to write it down. He can pardon orally. So the only question as to pardons is, did he exercise that power, or was it exercised by someone else? We know it was he who exercised the power to pardon his son, because he talked about it. But the pardons that came in the last day in favor of the January 6th congressional people, we don't know who authorized that. Now, the next question is, who would have standing to challenge it? Trump doesn't have standing to challenge it. The person who got the pardon wouldn't have standing to challenge it, obviously. So who could challenge a pardon claiming that, well, Biden didn't really do it, it was somebody else in the office who did it? So I don't think we're going to see a lot of a successful litigation to get these pardons voided. The only way it can come up is if, for example, prosecutors go, and this could happen, prosecutors could go after somebody who was pardoned and argue in court that the pardon was invalid. I think that argument might very well lose unless they could demonstrate that Biden himself didn't pardon. The writing isn't important when it comes to pardons. It's very important when it comes to bills becoming laws.
Well, it's a little bit like, almost like at the presidential level, classified documents. A president doesn't have to declassify in writing. The president can just say, or even think, this is declassified. It doesn't require a signature.
Yeah, in fact, with classification, it's not even in the Constitution, so they can do whatever they want. Pardons are in the Constitution, but not the signing requirement. Bills are in the Constitution, but the signing requirement.
All right, so that was Dershowitz on with Greta Van Susteren, Newsmax. Now, the question that I actually would be interested if I had been asking him questions is he starts listing who has standing. In other words, who has the right to challenge this in a court of law, and he notes not the current president, not the person who received the pardon. I wonder if Biden himself would have standing. If Biden were to, not this, I can't imagine a scenario in which this would occur. But if Biden were to say, I didn't do that. I didn't approve the pardon for Liz Cheney. Would that give him standing, given that he is the one who is said to have been responsible for the auto pin signing? not a likely scenario. And even if he did do it, you know what the argument would be that in favor of the auto pin or to push back? Well, he's senile. What is he? He doesn't remember. I mean, that would be the counter to that, I'm sure, by those who want, like if it was Liz Cheney, for example, challenging whether or not he was really responsible for the pardon of Liz Cheney or Fauci or any of these other individuals. All of a sudden, they would be the first ones to make sure that, he wasn't in his right mind all that time. I mean, that guy wasn't running the White House. He was wandering around, didn't know where he was half the time. They would be leading that narrative. The same people, of course, who long told us that he was sharp as a tack and really on top of it. Whether or not, and this would be an interesting challenge, and to see how it would play out if the Department of Justice determined, for example, Liz Cheney for destruction of evidence or tampering with a witness. Things that, according to emails and revelations we've learned, are things that she was involved in, hence, arguably, the pardon. Because this is information that is available to see that these are actions that she committed. And if the Department of Justice said, you know what, those pardons weren't valid. Because we don't have any proof that it came from Biden. And so we're going to just charge her anyhow. What would happen? Now, if you listen to the media, it would be yet another constitutional crisis because, of course, everything that they disagree with is a constitutional crisis. But it would be interesting to see, as Dershowitz notes, exactly how that would play out in the courts. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. President Trump revealing that roughly 80,000 pages of federal government files regarding the assassination of former President John F. Kennedy would be released today, sometime this afternoon. Quote, this is from yesterday. We are tomorrow announcing and giving all of the Kennedy files, so People have been waiting 4 decades for this. I've instructed my people that are responsible. Lots of different people put together by Tulsi Gabbard, Trump said while visiting the JFK Performing Arts Center on Monday, noting we have a tremendous amount of paper. You've got a lot of reading. I don't believe we're going to redact anything. I said, just don't redact. You can't redact, but we are going to be releasing the JFK files. There may be a lot of interesting information in there. I'm sure people will pore over it, particularly so-called historians. I also think most people don't anticipate that there's going to be some file that, like the CIA, hey guys, all right, we're going to do a follow-up on how well that assassination went. It's just, to me, unfathomable that anything that would be really damning, particularly of our own government, is something that would have been kept and then turned over because of the orders by Trump. But, I guess we'll see. I did want to mention, I was playing audio in which Alan Dershowitz was on with Greta Van Susteren talking about the autopin issue. And he also made comments about the Epstein files. And that is something that has just sort of quietly left people wondering what's going on, because you had the Attorney General that was making a pretty significant deal about how there were going to be some really damning stuff in this release. The release came, and it was nothing new. Then we were told the Southern District of New York was hiding information. Last week, I believe, it was announced that the FBI had dropped off what was said to be a truckload of new documents, but we've still not heard anything. Now, Dershowitz's play in this is pretty interesting because he was one of the accused, but we know this because he was the one who revealed that, and from the beginning demanded every bit of information about him be released, calling it all total and complete BS. And it's interesting, the behavior of Dershowitz versus everyone else who's been accused, who have stayed very, very, very quiet and wanted nothing to come out, while Dershowitz led the charge to make sure everything about him did come out in order to prove that it was a false accusation. But this is what he had to say last night about the Epstein files.
While I have the platform for 1 second, let me tell you, I know for a fact that Epstein-related materials are being suppressed to protect people. I know because I have seen them, but I am under a seal and I can't disclose them. But I can tell you that there are Epstein documents that are currently being suppressed in order to protect people. I can tell you that.
All right, give me a tip. How do we get them? Give me a tip. You can tell me that. That would not be something how do we get them?
Well, I think you can ask me to file an affidavit and file a notice with the court asking them to reveal the documents. They are there. I have seen them with my own eyes. I have held them in my hand.
All right. So what many people suspected and what he is alleging here is that I've seen these. They exist. And it's being covered up to protect these people. This is a tremendously massive test for Kash Patel and for the Trump administration. Because I don't know if there's been polling on this, but I suspect most people, it's undeniable that there were perpetrators in all of this. You can't have over 250 child victims of sex slavery on an island without having any perpetrators, without having any criminals. So we know they exist. We also know that there were recordings that Epstein had his island bugged so that he would presumably have, dirt to hold over people as leverage when he needed it, or for protection when he needed it. That combined with the fact that these are files we were told we were all going to see, that these pedophiles, these people who paid to rape children who were kept on this island, they would be held accountable. You just can't then not do that and expect people to believe that things have changed. So there's a tremendous amount riding on all of that. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Traffic update.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Ozark's first meteorologist, Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. A wind advisory and a red flag warning are in effect for the entire KSGF listening area until 8 p.m. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies with a high near 79. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 56. For your Wednesday, cloudy with a chance of showers after 3 p.m. with a high near 60. And Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 54.
Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line, couple of text messages. One, let's see, this is regarding auto pin usage. If someone was using the auto pin to originate and sign executive orders, bills, pardons, etc., without the president's permission or approval, wouldn't that be an insurrection? Regarding Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted of child trafficking. You can't have trafficking without a traffickee or trafficker, which I guess that's what she was. But point being, to the earlier point, it's not as if there's a question as to whether or not people were paying to rape these kids. There's over 200 and 250, I think, victims. It's crazy that this has been allowed as long as it has been to stay secret. You're talking about raping young girls who are trapped on an island. It's the thing nightmares are made. Have you ever seen that movie Hostel? I think there's a Hostel 2 and a Hostel 3. The first one was the best. If you don't like really violent stuff, don't look it up and watch it. It's not Hot Rod. And the premise is a couple of guys, and they go backpacking, or quote, backpacking through Europe. They're just, I think they graduate high school, and they meet these girls, and they get drugged, and they wake up, and they're essentially, this movie's been out for a while, so forgive me if I throw any spoilers your way, and they find themselves in this facility that they soon realize, or you realize anyhow as the observer of the film, that it's out in some European country or some former Soviet bloc country in which just extremely wealthy people pay to come torture people. These are people that they've just thrilled their lives out. There's nothing left that's thrilling for them because they've had anything and everything they've ever wanted because of the massive amount of wealth that they have. And so this is something that they have yet to experience. And so these people get drugged and kidnapped and put in these different rooms where really rich people, and they get to choose how to torture and kill them. And then, of course, the two Americans are trying to figure out a way to escape. And you think, how could something like that go on? That's just insane. While it may not be as graphic in nature as a movie like Hostel, you think about, here's this island that these girls, vulnerable young girls, get tricked into coming to, and they're not able to leave. It is an island. And then rich and powerful men, and maybe some women, pay to rape them. I say rape because of their age. The law dictates that they're not old enough to make that decision for themselves. But aside from that, it's not like they can leave the island. And that something like that would go on. We know that it went on. The person who is responsible for it, quote, kills himself. And that all this, it's the sort of thing that if that were a movie, at the end of the movie, you would have the, quick little scenes of all of the rich, powerful men being arrested, the rich, powerful men being sentenced, all of the news headlines. That's how the movie would end, right? Because that makes sense. Oh, my gosh, this horrific thing has been exposed. And so we've got to make sure all these people are held accountable. Years have gone by, like nothing. How does that happen? Well, clearly people are covering for these people. Speaking of covering for, I want to share a story coming up, or it's an opinion piece. This is from the New York Times. We were badly misled about COVID. Oh, really? The piece itself is pretty instructive, though boy does it miss the point as is summed up in 2 sentences. But it really nails the reality of what went on. But what is so clear when you read a piece like this, it's like you and I don't exist. The peons, the average person, we don't exist in the minds of these people because they write these editorials as if this is some new revelation. The reason they're writing it is to inform all of us what has been secret all this time, and that was, we were lied to about COVID. Like, hello? Yeah. Welcome to reality. But see, it doesn't officially count until the elites acknowledge it. I want to share with you some of the piece coming up here. Pyramid Roofing Company, talk and text line 447-KSGF. Opinion piece. New York Times, we were badly misled about COVID. Oh, well. How very enlightening. Let's enjoy the ride here. Since scientists began playing around with the dangerous pathogens in laboratories, the world has experienced 4 or 5 pandemics, depending on how you count. One of them, the 1977 Russian flu, was almost certainly sparked by a research mishap. Some Western scientists quickly suspected the odd virus had resided in a lab freezer for a couple of decades, but they kept mostly quiet for fear of ruffling feathers. Yet in 2020, when people started speculating that a laboratory accident might have been the spark that started the COVID-19 pandemic, they were treated like kooks and cranks. Many public health officials and prominent scientists dismissed the idea as a conspiracy theory, insisting that the virus had emerged from animals in a seafood market in Wuhan, China. And when a nonprofit called EcoHealth Alliance lost a grant because it was planning to conduct risky research into bat viruses with the Wuhan Institute of Virology, research that, if conducted with lax safety standards, could have resulted in a dangerous pathogen leaking out into the world, no fewer than 77 Nobel laureates and 31 scientific societies lined up to defend the organization. So the Wuhan research was totally safe, and the pandemic was definitely caused by natural transmission. It certainly seemed like a consensus. Well, we've since learned, however, that to promote the appearance of consensus, some officials and scientists hid or understated crucial facts, misled at least one reporter, orchestrated campaigns of supposedly independent voices, and even compared notes on how to hide their communications in order to keep the public from hearing the whole story. And as for the Wuhan laboratory's research, the details that have since emerged show that safety precautions might have been terrifyingly lax. 5 years after the onset of the COVID pandemic, it's tempting to think of all of this as ancient history. We learned our lesson about lab safety and about the need to be straight with the public, and now we can move on to new crises like measles and the evolving bird flu, right? Wrong. If anyone needs convincing that the next pandemic is only one accident away, check out a recent paper in Cell, a prestigious scientific journal. Researchers, many of whom work or have worked at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, yes, the same institution, describe taking samples of viruses found in bats, yes, the same animal, and experimenting to see if they could infect human cells and pose a pandemic risk. Sounds like the kind of research that should be conducted, if at all, with the very highest safety protocols, as W. Ian Lipkin and Ralph Barrick discussed in a recent guest essay. But if you scroll all the way down to page 19 of the journal article and squint, you learn that the scientists did all of this under what they call BSL 2+ conditions, a designation that isn't standardized and that Barrick and Lipkin say is insufficient for work with potentially dangerous respiratory viruses. If just one lab worker unwittingly inhaled the virus and got infected, there's no telling what the impact could be on Wuhan, a city of millions, or even the world. You'd think by now we'd have learned it's not a good idea to test possible gas leaks by lighting a match. And you'd hope that prestigious scientific journals would have learned not to reward such risky research. Why haven't we learned our lesson? Maybe because it's hard to admit that this research is risky now and to take the requisite steps to keep us safe without admitting it was always risky and that perhaps we were misled on purpose. Take the case of EcoHealth, that nonprofit organization that many of the scientists leaped to defend. When Wuhan experienced an outbreak of a novel coronavirus related to ones found in bats, and researchers soon noticed that pathogen had the same rare genetic feature that the EcoHealth Alliance and the Wuhan researchers had proposed inserting into bat coronavirus, you would think EcoHealth would sound the alarm far and wide. Well, it did not. Were it not for public record requests, leaks, and subpoenas, the world might never have learned about the troubling similarities between what could easily have been going on inside the lab and what was spreading throughout the city. Or take the real story behind two very influential publications that quite early in the pandemic cast the lab leak theory as totally baseless. The first, March 2020, paper in the journal Nature Medicine, which was written by 5 prominent scientists and declared that no laboratory-based scenario for the pandemic virus was even plausible. But we later learned, through congressional subpoenas and their own Slack conversations, that while the scientists publicly said the scenario was implausible, privately, many of the authors considered the scenario to be not just plausible, but likely. One of the authors of the paper, the evolutionary biologist Christian Anderson, wrote in the Slack message, quote, "The lab escape version of this is so friggin' likely to have happened because they were already doing this type of work, and the molecular data is fully consistent with that scenario," end quote. Spooked, the authors reached out for advice to Jeremy Farrar, now the chief scientist at the World Health Organization. In his own book, Farrar reveals he acquired a burner phone and arranged meetings for them with high-ranking officials, including Francis Collins, then the director of the National Institute of Health, and Dr. Anthony Fauci. Documents obtained through the public record request by the nonprofit U.S. Right to Know show that the scientists ultimately decided to move ahead with the false paper on the topic. Operating behind the scenes, Farr reviewed their draft and suggested to the authors that they rule out the lab leak even more directly. They complied. Anderson later testified to Congress that he had simply become convinced that a lab leak, while theoretically possible, was not plausible. Later, though, chat logs obtained by Congress show the paper's lead authors discussed how to mislead Donald G. McNeil Jr., who was reporting on the pandemic's origin for the Times, so as to throw him off track about the plausibility of the lab leak. The second influential publication to dismiss that possibility of the lab leak was a letter published in early 2020 in The Lancet. The letter, which described the idea as a conspiracy theory, appeared to be the work of a group of independent scientists. But it was anything but. Thanks to public document request, again by U.S. Right to Know, the public later learned that behind the scenes, Peter Daszak, EcoHealth's president, had drafted and circulated the letter, while strategizing how to hide his tracks and telling the signatories that it, quote, will not be identifiable as coming from any one organization or person. The Lancet later published an addendum disclosing Daszak's conflict of interest as a collaborator of the Wuhan lab, but the journal did not retract the letter. And they had assistance. Thanks to more public record requests and congressional subpoenas, the public learned that David Morenz, a senior scientific advisor to Fauci at the National Institute of Health, wrote to Daszak that he had learned how to make emails disappear, especially emails about pandemic origins. Quote, we're all smart enough to know to never have smoking guns, and if we did, we wouldn't put them in emails, and if we found them, we would delete them, he wrote. It's not hard to imagine how the attempt to squelch legitimate debate might have started. Some of the loudest proponents of the lab leak theory weren't just earnestly making inquiries. No, they were acting in terrible faith, using the debate over pandemic origins to attack legitimate, beneficial science, to inflame public opinion and to get attention. For scientists and public health officials, circling the wagons and vilifying anyone who dared to dissent might have seemed like a reasonable defense strategy. That's also why it might be tempting for those officials or the organizations they represent to avoid looking too closely at the mistakes they made, at the ways that, while trying to do such a hard job, they might have withheld relevant information and even misled the public. Such self-scrutiny is especially uncomfortable now, as an unvaccinated child has died of the measles, and anti-vaccine nonsense is being pumped out by the top of the federal government. But a clumsy, misguided effort like this didn't just fail, it backfired. These half-truths and strategic deceptions made it easier for people with the worst motives to appear trustworthy while discrediting important institutions where many earnestly labor in the public interest. Now, I've got to stop there, and we'll get this posted so you can read it yourself. And it goes on to talk about how our own CIA recognized that it was a lab leak, our own FBI, the Department of Energy, and recently it was revealed that the German intelligence agency had determined with, I believe, like 80 to 90% certainty it was a lab leak. So everyone knew this. While we were all being called conspiracy theorists for talking about it and suggesting it might be a possibility, while we were being censored by it or for it. But this is the takeaway. And what the opinion piece in the New York Times, so they go through and they note all the lies we were told by all the people we're supposed to trust. And that they didn't just lie, they conspired with one another to cover up the truth. And they conspired with one another to censor those of us who were asking questions. But the way that the New York Times sees this, as is written by Zeynep Tufekci, the real problem in all of this is that it made people doubt the experts. And it gave credibility to people like you and me and a lot of scientists and elected officials who were actually correct. Instead of recognizing what the real problem here, and this piece is sort of an open question or assertion that, we haven't learned anything. That in reality, the problems that led to COVID-19 are problems that still exist today. But the perhaps biggest problem that is not only not recognized in this New York Times piece, but instead is repeated, and that is the fact that the experts are the experts and the dummies are the dummies. And that's just the way it is. That you must not question the experts and you must not listen to the dummies. And that declaration, and I'll reread the sentences, noting that talking about what should be the self-scrutiny of the scientific community, as an unvaccinated child has died of measles and anti-vaccine nonsense is being pumped out by the top of the federal government. So in other words, she's talking about the very same people who question the COVID-19 vaccine, the very same people who noted it kind of seems like maybe this came out of a lab. She is feeding into the problem. This is part of the problem. Anyone who comes along and questions the officials like Anthony Fauci or any of these other people, vaccines are a perfect example, are automatically kooks. That's the same approach that was taken when it came to the COVID-19 vaccine. And it doesn't mean everyone who pushes back against the so-called consensus is automatically right. But what the New York Times clearly hasn't learned as they try to grapple with how is it we prevent these things from occurring in the future is the fact that dismissing people when they challenge the authorities like Anthony Fauci who lied and covered up certainly isn't an approach that is going to fix the problem. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Live in Collective Soul, along with special guest Our Lady Peace in Grayland, live Thunder Ridge Nature Arena, Friday, August 22nd. If you head over to KSGF.com, you can register for your chance to win tickets, a pair of them, to see those performances. You can also use the KSGF app. So either which one of those are available to you for your chance to win. We've got another hour straight ahead, news in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. was sharing the editorial in the New York Times admitting what so many of us have known for some time, and that is that there was a massive conspiracy to cover up and to lie about the pandemic. And the piece didn't focus on the lies about 6 feet and the masks and that vaccines would stop you from passing the virus on to people. They focused on the origin lie. And, again, this is the New York Times, and it is a better late than never scenario. I mean, at least they actually decided to look at the truth, to look at the reality. And this is information that collectively is based off of what was revealed through communications amongst Fauci and all of these people that were talking about how to hide this, how to cover it up. They put out knowingly a paper that was a false declaration that there was no plausibility to the lab leak theory while communicating with one another. They were acknowledging that in all likelihood that is what it is or what it was. None of this is in dispute. It is so clear that culturally, particularly with our media, we have not learned any lessons because Fauci, who we know lied, who we know conspired with others to create fake papers so that they could suppress people from talking about what potentially and what did end up becoming the truth. I mean, it didn't become the truth. It just was the truth. Yet this guy still gets invited on as an expert. Like, what? How dumb as a society must a society be to recognize, to learn that the people who had been lying to us all along, and then instead of expecting any sort of accountability, we still invite them on to give us their thoughts on things. What? There was an event, I don't know if this was, I think maybe last Thursday, unless it's this Thursday. The story, I believe, was posted on KY3, and it said Drury University will host many community leaders Thursday night for a panel discussion to discuss and archive the rights and wrongs of the city's response to COVID-19 pandemic. Now, listen to the people that they decided to have. This is Drury University. It's supposed to be a place of learning. Mayor McCheese of Springfield. Now, he was one that was responsible for spreading much of the disinformation, this totally made-up, fanciful 6-foot stuff. Got to keep 6 feet away from each other. The disinformation that masks somehow prevented COVID from being passed around. Even Fauci admitted, I don't even know where that came from. These it's almost like superstition. Like they might as well have given people rabbit's foots and said, as long as you keep this with you at all times, then you won't get COVID. Because that is as scientific as many of the claims that they made. Oh, get the vaccine, and that's the only way to stop you from passing it on to others. It's the only way to stop you, prevent you from getting COVID is to get the vaccine. There was a period of time in which I believe it was the county, Greene County Health Department, handed out signs to give to businesses to put in their yards to note, oh, everyone here is vaccinated. And that was done so that particularly the vulnerable and the elderly would feel safe going in there. How dangerous was that? Given that a room filled with vaccinated people had no bearing whatsoever as to whether those people actually had COVID, and it had no bearing as to whether it could pass it on. So you were falsely telling people, many of which would base their behavior off of those signs because perhaps they were vulnerable with their immune systems, they were elderly, and so they would specifically go to these locations because they believed that it was a safe space to go based off of these signs that were given out, declaring, oh, don't worry, everyone there's vaccinated. You don't have to worry about it. Steve Edwards was one of the extras, right? I know. Steve Edwards.
Yeah.
Then president and CEO of Cox Health, who just went hysterical on social media.
Didn't he try to throw a woman under the bus for like telehealth? Do you remember?
Yeah, there was this situation in which she tried, her son had strep throat or something. It was she knew what it was, or it was an ear infection, I think, because he had him before. So she was just trying to do the telehealth. But in order to like book the appointment, she had to put the code word COVID. And she's like, but he doesn't have COVID. No, you have to put that anyhow. And so she was on social media. And she was like, that seems kind of, does anybody else think this is weird? Well, I mean, so
and
then.
he screenshotted that.
Oh, yeah.
And he put
I swear,
her name and her son's name. Yeah.
And he had, basically accused them of, the mother being a nut job, and these are the people that are killing people. And he just went off the rail. I think he was probably drinking. It was, if I remember right, the timestamps were late at night. I could be wrong about that. But point being is, that this is a guy that they're using as some sort of expert at Drury on how we just so well handled this situation. Clay Goddard, then director of Springfield Greene County Health Department. Again, all of these people were responsible for making us have these magic 6 foot apart from one another spaces, and the magic vaccines that weren't actually vaccines, and the mask that didn't, do any good. They're the same people that at, some point were telling, well, just make your own, and encouraging people, oh, look at the kids in classrooms. They're making these masks and taking them to hospitals. Isn't this wonderful? Things not based in science whatsoever. Grenita Latham, superintendent of the Springfield Public Schools. Oh, yes, definitely an expert when it comes to COVID. Now, do you think that a discussion at Drury University with people like this is about, hey, listen, man, boy, did we learn that you shouldn't listen to people just because government says they're experts? Do you think they said, yeah, I mean, here's some great lessons. We were told the 6 feet away was a safe distance, only to have Fauci tell us that it was an arbitrary number and it didn't mean anything whatsoever. That was a real lesson to us, that simply because government labels someone an expert, that we should actually take a scientific approach to these things and not just blindly follow orders. Do you think that that's what that discussion was at Drury? I suspect not. It was probably a self-congratulatory, pat each other on the back, the obligatory, well, of course, we made some mistakes, but ultimately, we just really guided the city through, and we're just really proud of the fact that we were out there daily trying to communicate. Communicate disinformation. I tell you, the thing that out of all of it that just appalled me to the largest degree, and I remember talking about it, was when they were handing out those signs to give to businesses, luring people in based off the false premise that they were safe from COVID because everyone was vaccinated in there. And then those people had the audacity to claim that people on social media that were like, gosh, this is kind of weird, this doesn't make sense, that they were the problem. That panel at Drury University was filled with people who were pushing the problem. Oh, but they were just following orders. They were just listening to experts. I love this line in the news leader. Oh, sorry, it's not news leader, it's KY3. The idea is to document the history of the pandemic in Springfield so future generations of leaders can learn from what happened, both good and bad, something Springfield Mayor Ken McClure did by studying the Spanish flu pandemic. Oh, well, that paid off.
Do you think they're going to talk about whenever
See,
leaders...
I think this may have happened last Thursday.
Let me see.
The story was posted on a Thursday, but it referenced coming up on Thursday, so I don't know.
It was published the 13th. 18th,
which was
a Thursday.
Yeah, so I don't know if it happened on that day or if it's this upcoming Thursday.
I don't know. I'll have to look it up. Yeah, do you think any of these people on this panel are going to talk about when Springfield leaders ordered businesses to not sell non-essential items?
Oh, right. Yeah. What was it? One of them, like sunscreen?
Yeah,
so you wouldn't
bug
go out.
spray.
Yeah, because they didn't want you to go outside. Like
Which
the
was
place
great
where it
for
was,
my husband, who was a landscaper.
Well, and well, not to mention, of course, we know that being outside was a much safer place to be than all of it was so backwards. And these people, they always fall back on we were just following orders. I mean, listening to the experts, that's today's version of just following orders. They'll never apologize for that stuff. They'll never apologize to the people who lost their jobs. They'll never apologize to the people who may have gotten COVID because they believe the experts that it's safe to go in this restaurant because this restaurant has a sign saying everyone there is vaccinated. They'll never apologize for that stuff. Their get-out-of-jail-free card is I was just following orders. And they all sit around, and this is it's a way to justify their behaviors to sit around with other people who also were responsible for spreading disinformation, encouraging people to call 911 on one another. Remember this trash city? Black Lives Matter is going to have a rally. Well, that's okay. I mean, that's fine. If you want to go ahead and do that, that's okay. Wasn't that amazing that COVID didn't spread during a BLM protest downtown Springfield? That's a remarkable thing. They never explained the science behind that. These are the last people that should be listened to. And it is a shameful stain on what it's supposed to be a learning institution that you would have Drury University host these people as somehow experts that we should listen to. If anyone locally demonstrated that they are the people who shouldn't be listened to when it comes to COVID, it's those people. Oh no, but they were following orders from the good people. And it doesn't matter that they were wrong, because what matters is who it was that they were following orders from. That's what matters. Science. Oh, that's right. Fauci was science. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. A wind advisory and a red flag warning are in effect until 8 p.m. Today it'll be mostly cloudy and breezy with a high near 79. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 56. For your Wednesday, cloudy with a chance of showers after 3 p.m. with a high near 60. And looking ahead to Thursday, we'll see sunny skies with a high near 54.
Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, for all of your home buying needs, your home selling needs. If you are looking to sell your home, maybe you've not done this before, what oftentimes happens is you'll get an offer, but there are a number of things that they want you to fix. Like, the sidewalk's uneven, we'd like you to fix that. Some termite damage in the structure, nothing serious, but a little we'd like that replaced. And then maybe you've got 4 or 5 different things, but these are 4 or 5 different industries in which you've never had to hire someone. So you don't know. You know that there's some good, there's some bad, there's some that look to rip you off, there's some that look to do a real honest job. There's some that have honest in their name and description. The benefit of Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, is that she works with these people all the time. She knows these people. And you may say to yourself, well, I guess don't most realtors? No. I mean, a lot of them, it is as simple as, I found these houses, let's show up, I'll walk you through it, and that's where it ends. But Emily Johnson, she is full service when it comes to all things home buying, home selling, and that's why that's who you want. That's who I recommend, and I know so many of you have utilized her and recommended her to others as well for all of those home buying needs, those home selling needs. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. I found a story about those stupid signs.
Oh, yeah.
So this was a story, it was a KY3 story, September 14th, 2021. Springfield business is proud to be 100% vaccinated, sharing their milestone with signs. I think we all agree at this point, even Fauci, that being vaccinated does not stop you from spreading COVID. Never did. It doesn't stop you from getting it. The story read at the time, a few businesses and organizations across Springfield are sharing their vaccination milestones with the public through new signs from the Springfield Greene County Health Department. These are disinformation signs. The sign reads, proud to be 100% vaccinated. To a few of those businesses, like Gilardi's restaurant on Walnut, which, by the way, is a great place to eat, it is more than a simple sign. It's a statement of devotion and commitment. Well, that's accurate. Quote, we really have a dedication to protecting and supporting the community, and the vaccines are a very simple and effective way of doing so. Well, not so much. Everyone working at Gilardi's is fully vaccinated, the owner said. That was a choice, not a demand. Since the beginning of this, really, it's been, how do we protect my immediate family, my work family, my community family? Over at Mother's Brewing, it's a pretty similar situation. It's our culture here, said Mother's Brewing owner and founder Jeff Schrag. We didn't mandate it as a condition of employment, but everyone just went out and got vaccines as soon as they could. We think it's best for the community. We think it's best for us as a brewery. Some of this stuff is just laughable in retrospect. Schrag said many employees were eager to get their vaccines as soon as they had a chance to get it. Isn't he running for mayor? Incidentally, is he not one of the mayoral candidates?
Oh, I think he is.
Yeah. Many of the employees were eager to run out and get the vaccines as soon as they could. Ooh, yes. It was something people took a priority of, he said. When they began offering surplus vaccines at Walmart, there was a day people ran out of the office trying to get those surplus vaccines back in March and April. It became super easy to get vaccinated, and everybody took advantage of that. Whether enjoying Italian dining at Gilardi's or a cold brew at Mother's, both businesses say their vaccination milestone is as much about them as it is their customers. Quote, we want to have the safest place possible for our customers because we dearly love them. I think we all just believe vaccinations give you some confidence that you can go around your business and you're doing the best thing for you and your community. Well, if the idea here is that you are not in danger of, getting COVID and passing it on to someone, that of course was not true. See, this is where the government had the local Greene County Health Department handing out signs, falsely convincing people that they were making it safe for their customers to not get COVID. So here they're putting signs out, inviting them in. Hey, you don't have to worry about getting COVID here. The irony, of course, is that it was making it more dangerous for those people, because if you had people who didn't want to go anywhere because of COVID, perhaps they did have compromised immune systems, but they saw these signs handed out and in the front, well, I guess I'm safe there because the government says I am. While James Martin said he believes vaccines and medical care are ultimately personal and private issues, he does have a message for other businesses in the area. It is a safety issue. It is a safety issue as much as it is not standing on a wobbly ladder, not having water dripping on an electrical outlet. Maintaining the safety and security of your personal family and your work family is of the ultimate concern for business owners, especially in these times. I would encourage any business owner to please think about this, the safety not only of themselves, their family, their work family, but our community family. Martin also noted some business owners may want to try new methods to encourage vaccines among employees. For businesses who are wanting to increase their vaccinations, clear, honest, and open communication is important. Well, unless you're questioning the effectiveness of vaccines at the time, of course. If an incentive needs to be given, it's certainly a lot better than a stick. Maybe give them paid time off in order to go get the vaccine. Perhaps give them a physical or monetary reward. Pay them. Ultimately, the vaccine is safe. Au contraire. Ultimately, the vaccine is safe, and it's certainly a lot safer than getting COVID. Not for a lot of people. In fact, we had, we did an author of the week. Remember that gal? She was all about the vaccine. Her husband worked for the government. She was from Colorado, and so she entered into the test phases and then had horrific, debilitating impacts that eventually they admitted, yes, that it was the result of the vaccine, but just she was horrified to find out that they weren't revealing that publicly, and they admitted that this was a woman all in for it, that they knew that there were these side effects, that otherwise healthy people that really didn't have to fear about their overall health when it came to COVID. They weren't in the category that had to have grave concern, would go and get the vaccine and then end up with these horrific side effects. Now, obviously not everyone did. And frankly, sometimes you don't know till years down the road.
I think that book was called Worth a Shot. Is that right?
Yeah, it may have been. If you want to go back and listen to her, it was just a few weeks ago, I think, if I remember right. So if you go to KSGF.com and
I'm pretty sure that's it.
Week,
I'll link it to the show notes.
Yeah, you can go back. Well, and that
you also had one.
Yeah. It may have been the next week or the week after that. It was a doctor who I don't remember the title of the book.
That was Dr. James Thorpe. Sacrifice, how the deadliest vaccine in history targeted the most vulnerable.
Yes, he was an OBGYN, and very early on, they began realizing the horrific side effects of pregnant women getting the shots. But what he also wrote about is the horror of seeing, to some degree, what the New York Times wrote about with the cover-up is these people that are supposed to be the ones who have health in mind, and that being their motivating factor, end up conspiring, all because it's like because people don't listen to them, so they're like, we'll show you. We'll shut down anything that says we're wrong. Yes. Nothing but wonderful, nothing but healthy. You read some of these stories from the Springfield area. By the way, in the little town of Republic, they wouldn't even bring it up to a vote whether to force businesses to mandate masks. There were some communities that were run by scientifically minded people. I noticed that jury panel didn't have any of those folks on there. It was only the experts who led us down the wrong path. Okay. Why are we talking about COVID? Well, that New York Times piece with this amazing revelation that we were lied to about COVID, it just sort of sparked the conversation. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. All right, we got to throw it to traffic. My apologies to those folks, as we're running just a little bit late. Tom Arts, though, he had texted, isn't it the 5-year anniversary of 2 weeks to flatten the curve? Yeah. Remember that? 2 weeks, the expert said, just 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and then everything will be, oh, yes. And then we continue to listen to the experts.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Ozark's first meteorologist, Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. A wind advisory and a red flag warning are in effect until 8 p.m. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies with a high near 79. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 56. For your Wednesday, cloudy with a chance of showers after 3 p.m. with a high near 60. And looking ahead to Thursday, sunny skies with a high near 54.
A couple text messages. Let's see which one to start with. So someone had asked, was mothers handing out free beer for being vaccinated, or was that someone else? So I didn't recall for sure, but I found the information. Free beer and COVID-19 vaccine soon to be on tap at Mother's Brewing Company. This is May 19th of 2021. There was a vaccination clinic at the brewery. All ages 21 or older, and if you got vaccinated, you did get a free pint of $5 beer. You know who hosted it? Cox Health. Cox Health!
There was so much of that happened.
It's so embarrassing. So embarrassing.
Remember, they gave out, like, gift cards and things like that if you got vaccinated. They had, like, a lottery system at one point.
Yeah. Oh, there was a lottery system. I mean, it's just the nuttiness and the hysteria and the paying people to get it, giving people beer to get it. And ultimately, scientifically, we know that in terms of the overall pattern in which COVID behaved, outcome no different. Now, there may be some people who, if they were elderly and compromised in terms of their immune system, that getting the vaccine may have limited the symptoms as such that they survived it instead of dying. But that's not a vaccine, and that doesn't stop it from spread. That's a whole different thing. You know, of course, it would be interesting to know. We've learned that ventilators actually were responsible for killing off a number of people. I'm not sure if those numbers have been done, but people that it was the ventilation that oftentimes caused people to die. And let's not forget, people like in Michigan under Governor Whitmer and under Cuomo in New York, they were taking these people that had COVID out of hospitals and putting them in nursing homes. They specifically put them with the absolute most vulnerable people and killed them off. Also, they could free up beds in the hospitals so that they could get more COVID people in and get more money. It was all money. Of course, who is it right now in polling that leads the Democrat primary for mayor of New York? Cuomo. Only Democrats in New York. The people who were most Nazi-ish about not spreading COVID would, at this point right now, favor the guy who deliberately put COVID-positive patients into nursing homes. That's the guy that they would pick. Yeah, we want him to run New York. They'll disown their own family members for not getting vaccines, but they will vote to put a guy in charge who killed off countless elderly people by deliberately putting COVID vaccine patients in with them when that was something nobody questioned. We all knew that COVID for the elderly could be deadly. That, of course, would have been the scientific approach. COVID vaccines for people whose health was already compromised in the elderly. No, they just couldn't help themselves. I didn't plan on talking about COVID this much. I did want to send one other, or read one other. So someone had posted this. I had a thought while I was driving and listening to the article, or they texted it in, to the article about COVID lab leak deception and the mention of measles. I pretty much ignored all measles articles because all I see in the headlines is the vaccination debate. My expectation is just like the origin of COVID was covered up, the origin of measles outbreak is likely to be covered up by the media. My theory is that our lack of border security is the root cause of measles outbreaks, not a lack of vaccinations. I have no idea if the media is talking about that possibility because all I see is vaccination headlines. Now, there's a lot of truth to this. And these outbreaks, they aren't, I don't know if unusual is the best word to use. It's not something that has happened all of a sudden. To the point of the person who texted that in, the reason the media is covering it is because it's a way to trash on Trump by trashing on RFK Jr. That's the only reason. There's that measles outbreak in Texas and all this. Oh my gosh, this is historic, this sort of outbreak. Those outbreaks happen with a frequency most people don't realize. In fact, it wasn't long ago that in the Kansas City area there was an outbreak. And in the Chicago area, over the years, they pop up. Why is it that the Texas outbreak got so much media attention? Because then they could talk about RFK Jr. He's a science denier and people are going to die because he's running around telling people not to get vaccines. Now, in that particular case, it apparently came, I think it was Mennonites, maybe it was a tight-knit religious community, which while people may disagree with their religious reasons for not getting vaccines, that had nothing to do with RFK Jr. and nothing to do with Donald Trump. People whose religious beliefs compel them to not get vaccines didn't start doing that because of RFK Jr. But the reason that was discovered is because the media really dug down to try to find where it was coming from. That doesn't generally happen. When there was the outbreak in the Kansas City area, you could look article after article after article, and there was no mention of even trying to find the source. That's when you know, in all likelihood, it is some sort of facility that houses people who have come into this country illegally, because most of those countries don't require vaccines. Yeah, but people get tested when they come in, not when they come in illegally. This is one of the reasons that coming into the country illegally is frowned upon, because you evade those requirements. When you come through legally, yes, that is something that is part of the protocol, not when you come in here illegally. And so if you go through, and now it may be more difficult now because of the fact that the media has politicized it by trying to cover it in the context of vaccines themselves. But prior to that, if you were to look up outbreak, measles, or tuberculosis, you would find news stories, from a few years ago in Chicago and Baltimore and all these different cities. And there's one thing that they had no interest whatsoever in finding out, and that was, where are these outbreaks originating from? From where is this occurring? And it's because they oftentimes were in facilities that housed people who are in the country illegally. And by the way, that just makes sense. If you have people coming into the country from countries that don't have vaccines, yeah, that's going to happen. It really isn't a controversial observation, or at least it shouldn't be. There was a posting on, I don't know which social media outfit it was. Did you see the posting? It was the way that we handled measles then versus now. It had the Brady Bunch.
Oh,
So there was a side-by-side, I don't know, it was a few minutes long, and there was an episode where one of the Bradys got measles. I think they all ended up getting measles. That was the whole episode. And I think it was Bobby came home. He was sent home. He's like, I got the measles. And they're like, oh, no. And he's like, yeah. And she goes, it feels like you have a fever. He goes, yeah, it's 101.3. And so then all of the kids end up, it shows another scene, and they're all playing games together. And they're talking about how measles is a great way to be sick because there's no medicine you have to take for it, and you get to stay home and play games. And then in the end, they're like, everybody got it. Yay, we're done. And Alice is like, not so fast. And then Alice is standing there, and she's got the measles. And they're like, oh, Alice, So the whole episode was about the measles. And so someone took, a number of the relevant scenes in terms of how they reacted, because that was a reflection of culture at the time. That was a storyline that was relatable to families when it came to the measles. Like, oh, here we go. Then it was followed up by a promo for, I don't know if this is it must be somewhat recent, Law and Order SVU, in which the storyline is about a measles outbreak. And the tone of it was end of times. The tone of it was, oh my God, we're all going to die. The world as we know it is going to come to, the slow dramatic music, the slow motion look of horror on their faces. And you thought, how far we have fallen. We've gone from the Bradys, it was late 60s, early 70s, sometime in that era, in which measles, we dealt with it like normal, mature, rational adults, to today, and a lot of it, again, is political. If Donald Trump and RFK Jr. weren't in the picture, there would be no storylines in Law & Order SVU about measles outbreaks that, are trying to scare people into thinking this is the worst thing ever. And measles are just something new, and my God, how are we going to cope with this? But that's what they try to do. They try to whip you into a frenzy. And when you recognize how it was we dealt with it once upon a time, God forbid if chicken pox ever comes back. Oh, Lord, they'll probably demand that chickens start getting slaughtered. Slaughter them from, the bird flu, and then have to slaughter them for chicken pox. Chicken pox, by the way, don't come from chickens. I know, because I had chicken pox. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers.
Thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company. See, severe weather, it rolled through the Ozarks on Friday. We had lots of rain, lots of wind, lots of hail. If you experienced any type of roof damage, don't go at it alone and don't go with a random door knocker that just may appear on your front step. Make sure that you have a professional on your side. And that's why I want to recommend Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, the Pyramid team, they offer free roof inspections, so you're not out anything whenever they come out to your home. They don't use scare tactics, and they don't do 2-hour sales pitches. Plus, if you do have damage and you need to file a claim, the Pyramid team, they will work through that insurance process with you without making you sign anything. So if it is time to have the Pyramid team out to your home, schedule that free roof inspection with Josh today. You can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Pyramid Roofing Company Talk a Text Line. Good morning, Sarah and Nick. This is Bill from Pittsburgh again. Hey, Bill.
Hi, Bill.
Listening to you to the show. And another thing that I find funny about the media, not only are they not talking about measles right now, but we have one of the most amazing things going on, the fact that Elon Musk's SpaceX is actually conducting a rescue mission from space station, and the media is completely silent about that. You guys have a wonderful day and enjoy your show. You too, and thank you very much. We talked about this Elon
First hour.
The first hour, and about the to me, there is a combination of, yes, this is awesome. This is the sort of thing that collectively, once upon a time, we all rallied around. This is awesome, a rescue. I grew up in the area. I remember sitting in front of the TV when baby Jessica was being rescued out of the well. The entire nation watched. It wasn't political in nature. And here we have these astronauts that were left up there. And we know why they were left up there, because the Biden administration didn't want to make Elon Musk look good, look like some sort of American hero. The astronauts themselves, or at least one of them, says he fully believes that that's the case. I'll throw another thought out there for you, and it's sick, but it's true. There are some of them, I guarantee you, that secretly hope something goes wrong. They secretly hope that they can have wall-to-wall coverage of these astronauts dying because of Elon Musk's arrogance, believing that he could bring them home. That they will be gleeful at that. No, they won't express that glee. They may even tell themselves that they're horrified and this is awful, but they will revel in it. And if they are in the media checking in to see how things are going, I guarantee you that's why. There's something wrong with these people. Speaking of something wrong with these people, so you probably heard about the CNN poll that show Democrats have gotten even more unpopular since the election, which really isn't good for them. In fact, I think the early 90s is when they started doing this popularity poll, and this is the worst it's ever been. There was also the question, which person best reflects the core values of the Democrat Party? This was among Democrats and Democrat-leaning independents. Ocasio-Cortez was first place.
Out of all the people. Well, honestly, they really don't have that many people to pick from.
Well, and this is this is actually the point. Now, she got 10%. Kamala Harris, 9%. Bernie Sanders, 8%. Hakeem Jeffries, the election denier, 6%. Barack Obama, 4%. What does that tell you about how Barack Obama completely destroyed his reputation in the Democrat Party in his behavior during this last election, where you tell me twice as many Democrats, more than twice as many, feel that Ocasio-Cortez is a better representation of the Democrat Party than Barack Obama?
Did they ask the follow-up question, now why do you feel this person?
Well, of course not.
I'd be curious as to why.
That idiot Jasmine Crockett got 4, Gavin Newsom 2, Pelosi 2, Slotkin 2, Schumer 2, Tim Walz 1, Brashear 1, Cory Booker 1, Al Green 1, Buttigieg 1, Whitmer 1, Josh Shapiro 1, Elizabeth Warren 1, Biden 1, Adam Schiff 1, Jamie Raskin 1, Hillary Clinton 1, John Fetterman 0. There were a few other names in there that I pulled out the ones that you probably recognize. Now, You say, well, with that many names, of course it's going to get split up. This is a demonstration, though, of how clear it is that there is no leadership. None. That you can throw all these names out, and with the exception of the top few, it's all evenly split. The highest rated individual will be Ocasio-Cortez, and let me tell you why she got 10% above everyone else. Because crazies stick together. And she, of all of those named, other than Jasmine Crockett, they're both equally crazy, but Ocasio-Cortez has the name recognition. So a lot of the extreme crazies and the anti-Semites in the Democrat Party, they're not familiar with Crockett yet, but the less crazy Democrats got spread out amongst the others. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed.